The fitness secret that adds 10 years to your life and why most people get it wrong. Here's something that'll surprise you. The average 70-year-old today has the physical capacity of a 55-year-old from just 2 generations ago. But here's the twist. It's not because we've magically evolved. It's because we've completely misunderstood what fitness actually means after 60. And I'm not talking about those feel-good stories you see on Instagram of 80-year-olds doing backflips. I'm talking about real, peer-reviewed science that's challenging everything we thought we knew about aging. Because it turns out the biggest threat to your independence, your mental clarity, and even your lifespan after 60 isn't what you think it is. And the solution? It's almost embarrassingly simple. But before I tell you what it is, you need to understand why your doctor probably hasn't mentioned it yet. Let me paint you a picture. In 2023, researchers at the University of Copenhagen followed 1,500 people over the age of 65 for 8 years. They weren't tracking heart disease or diabetes specifically. They were tracking something much more fundamental: how these people moved through their daily lives. And what they found was genuinely shocking. The number one predictor of whether someone would still be independent at 75, 80, or even 85 wasn't their cholesterol levels. It wasn't their weight. It wasn't even their family history. It was something called functional strength. Basically, could they get up from a chair without using their hands? Could they carry their own groceries? Could they recover their balance if they stumbled? Now, you might be thinking, well, obviously staying active matters. But here's where it gets interesting. The study found that people who started strength training after 65, even if they'd been sedentary their entire lives, saw dramatic improvements in just 6 months. We're talking about reversing decades of decline. But there's a catch, and this is where most people, even well-meaning fitness enthusiasts, get it completely wrong. See, when most people think about fitness in their 60s, 70s, or 80s, they picture gentle yoga, walking groups, maybe some water aerobics, light stuff, safe stuff. And don't get me wrong, those activities have value, but they're not addressing the real problem. The real problem has a name: sarcopenia. It's the progressive loss of muscle mass that begins in your 30s and accelerates dramatically after 60. Every decade after 30, you lose roughly 3 to 8% of your muscle mass if you don't actively fight it. By the time you're 70, you could have lost 25 to 30% of the muscle you had in your prime. And here's what nobody tells you. This isn't just about looking fit or being strong. Muscle tissue is metabolically active. It's constantly communicating with your brain, your bones, your immune system. When you lose muscle, you're not just losing strength, you're losing a critical buffer against almost every disease of aging. But the medical community has been slow to catch on. Why? Because for decades, the focus was entirely on cardiovascular health. Heart disease was the big killer, so everyone talked about aerobic exercise. And that's important, absolutely, but we missed something crucial in the process. Let me tell you about Ruth. She's 73, lives in Minnesota, and 2 years ago, she couldn't climb a flight of stairs without stopping to rest. Her doctor told her it was just part of getting older. Maybe cut back on the salt, take her medications, keep doing her daily walks. Ruth didn't accept that answer. She hired a personal trainer who specialized in older adults, and they started her on a strength training program. Nothing crazy, body weight exercises, resistance bands, eventually some light dumbbells. Within 4 months, Ruth was climbing stairs normally again. Within 8 months, she was hiking with her grandchildren. Her bone density improved, her balance improved, her blood sugar levels, she's type 2 diabetic, dropped significantly. Her doctor was genuinely confused by the turnaround. But here's the kicker: Ruth isn't special. Her story is increasingly common among people who've discovered what researchers have been quietly documenting for the past decade. The question isn't whether strength training works for older adults. The question is, why isn't everyone doing it? And that's where things get complicated. Because there are real barriers. Fear is a big one. If you're 68 years old and you've never lifted a weight in your life, walking into a gym can feel intimidating. What if you hurt yourself? What if you look foolish? What if you're just too old to start? These fears are not irrational. The fitness industry has done a terrible job of making older adults feel welcome. Most gyms are designed for 25-year-olds trying to build Instagram-worthy physiques. The music's loud, the equipment looks complicated, and nobody's teaching you how to deadlift when you have arthritis in your hands. But here's what's interesting. When researchers actually study what happens when older adults start strength training programs designed specifically for them, the injury rates are remarkably low. Lower, in fact, than many traditional senior-friendly activities. A 2019 study published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine analyzed data from over 8,000 older adults in strength training programs. The injury rate was less than 1%. Compare that to activities like gardening or even walking on uneven surfaces, which send thousands of seniors to the emergency room every year. So the danger isn't in the activity itself. The danger is in not knowing how to do it properly. Let's pause for a second and talk about what actually happens in your body when you start strength training after 60, because this is where the science gets genuinely fascinating. When you lift something heavy, and by heavy I mean challenging for you, which might be 5 pounds or 50 pounds depending on where you're starting, your muscle fibers experience tiny micro tears. This sounds bad, but it's actually exactly what you want. These micro tears send a signal to your body, hey, we need to get stronger here. Your body responds by not just repairing those fibers, but building them back slightly thicker and stronger than they were before. This process, called muscle protein synthesis, doesn't stop working just because you're older. It slows down, yes, it becomes less efficient, but it absolutely still works. And here's the remarkable part. Strength training doesn't just build muscle. It triggers a cascade of positive effects throughout your entire body. Your bones respond by becoming denser. They actually remodel themselves in response to the mechanical stress. Your nervous system becomes more efficient at recruiting muscle fibers. Your insulin sensitivity improves. Your brain produces more of a protein called BDNF, which is essentially fertilizer for brain cells. This isn't speculation. This is measurable, reproducible science. But let me tell you what this really means in practical terms, because numbers and studies are one thing, real life is another. My Uncle Tom is 76. 5 years ago, he fell in his bathroom and broke his hip. The recovery was brutal. 6 weeks of barely being able to move. When he finally got back on his feet, he'd lost so much muscle mass that simple tasks became monumental challenges. Getting in and out of the car, putting on his shoes, standing up from the couch without help. He sank into a depression. He told his aunt he felt like his life was effectively over, that he'd become a burden. But Tom got lucky. His physical therapist was progressive enough to incorporate strength training into his rehab. Not just stretching and range of motion exercises, actual resistance work. It started small, body weight exercises, resistance bands, eventually some light dumbbells. Within 3 months, Tom was functionally independent again. 6 months later, he was stronger than he'd been before the fall. Today, at 76, he does things he couldn't do at 71. He carries his own luggage when he travels, he plays with his great-grandchildren on the floor, and gets up without grunting. He's living proof that the aging process isn't just one-way decline. The tragedy is how many people never get that second chance. So why isn't this common knowledge? Why aren't doctors prescribing strength training the way they prescribe blood pressure medication? Part of it is institutional inertia. Medical schools have been teaching cardiovascular health for so long that it's deeply embedded in the culture. Strength training feels like something for athletes, not medicine. Part of it is economic. There's no pharmaceutical company making billions of dollars off of dumbbells and resistance bands. Nobody's running TV commercials for squats. And part of it, honestly, is ageism. There's a persistent belief in our culture that older adults are fragile, that they should be protected from challenging themselves physically. It's well-intentioned, but it's also deeply condescending and ultimately harmful. The tide is starting to turn, though. In 2021, the World Health Organization updated its guidelines on physical activity for older adults. For the first time, they explicitly recommended resistance training at least twice a week for everyone over 65. The American College of Sports Medicine has been saying this for years. The evidence is becoming too overwhelming to ignore. But changing medical practice takes time. And in the meantime, millions of older adults are missing out on something that could genuinely transform their quality of life. Here's what actually works, and this is based on the current scientific consensus, not fitness industry marketing. For older adults, the sweet spot seems to be 2 to 3 strength training sessions per week, working all major muscle groups. Each session doesn't need to be long, 30 to 45 minutes is plenty. You're looking for exercises that challenge you, where the last few repetitions feel difficult but doable. 8 to 12 repetitions per exercise, 2 to 3 sets. And here's what's crucial. You don't need a gym membership if that's a barrier for you. Bodyweight exercises, squats, push-ups against a wall, planks, can be incredibly effective. Resistance bands cost $20 and can provide a full-body workout. A pair of adjustable dumbbells gives you everything you need for years.
The specific exercises matter less than you think. What matters is progressive overload, gradually over weeks and months, making things a little bit harder. Adding one more repetition, using a slightly heavier weight, holding a position for 5 seconds longer. Your body doesn't care whether you're in a fancy gym or your living room. It just cares that you're consistently challenging it to adapt. But let's be realistic about the obstacles. Starting something new in your 60s or 70s isn't easy, even when you know it's good for you. The first obstacle is simply not knowing where to begin. If you've never done strength training, the learning curve feels steep. This is where working with a qualified professional, even for just a few sessions, can make all the difference. Look for a trainer certified in senior fitness. They exist and they're worth finding. Many offer virtual sessions now, which can be more convenient and less intimidating. The second obstacle is consistency. Life gets in the way. You feel sore after your first few sessions. That's normal, by the way, and it goes away. And it's tempting to skip the next one. This is where having a routine helps. Same days, same times. Treat it like a doctor's appointment you can't reschedule. The third obstacle is expectations. You're not going to look like a bodybuilder, and that's not the goal. You're building functional strength, the kind that lets you live independently, that keeps you from falling, that lets you do the things you enjoy without pain or limitation. And here's something important. You will see results faster than you expect. In your first month, most of the strength gains come from neural adaptations, your body getting better at recruiting the muscle you already have. That feels good. It's motivating. After that, the actual muscle building kicks in, and that's when the really dramatic changes happen. There's one more thing I need to tell you because it might be the most important part of this whole story. Strength training after 60 isn't just about adding years to your life, although it does that. A comprehensive study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association in 2022 found that older adults who did regular strength training had a 15% lower risk of all-cause mortality compared to those who didn't. That's comparable to the benefit you get from not smoking. But the real benefit is adding life to your years. Think about what independence actually means. It means being able to travel without worrying about keeping up. It means playing with your grandchildren without fear of getting hurt. It means not having to ask for help with basic tasks. It means living in your own home for as long as you want to. Not moving to assisted living because you can't manage the stairs anymore. Strength training is the single most powerful tool we have for maintaining that independence. It's not a magic bullet. You still need to eat well, get enough sleep, manage stress, stay socially connected. But in terms of physical function, nothing else comes close to its impact. And here's the beautiful part. It's never too late to start. Studies have shown measurable benefits in people who began strength training in their 90s. Your body wants to adapt. It wants to get stronger. You just have to give it the right stimulus. So here's where we end up. The fitness secret that adds years to your life isn't complicated.